Joining me now from Dallas, Texas, in the U.S. for more on the current twists and turns of U.S. politics and the pressure on the government is a global affairs analyst, Ibidolakbo Ajayi. Good to have you join us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This has been called a deal of convenience and not consensus. I want to get your thoughts on it and how Americans are also responding to it.
Well, if you think about it, when we hear the word or the term government shutdown, it's not really a shutdown as such, because if the government of the United States should shut down the whole country, it's just going to be up in arms and everything will just go crazy. So in effect, this really is about the part of the government funding that requires appropriation just being agreed upon. And this affects majorly government workers, contractors, and a whole lot of people that depend on the government for survival, air traffic controllers. So, but this is something that happens every year where it becomes a partisan issue, and each party is trying to see how they can leverage and use it to their advantage to get things passed that maybe they normally wouldn't have been able to. For example, Democrats wanted to get more aid for Ukraine, and that is not going to be in what has been approved. So it's a game of chess between the two parties, and it's something that will happen irrespective of which party is in government. So for me, it's really just posturing most of the time, just trying to see what advantage you can get over your opposing party.
I'll get to Ukraine in just a moment, but I want to ask you what this means for Speaker McCarthy, who is now being threatened by the hardliners in Republican Party to remove him from office.
Yeah, that's interesting, because if you remember when he came up for nomination and when the vote to make him speaker came up, the one person that was vehemently against his nomination was Mark Gaetz, who is also now the person that's threatening to have him removed and to start the proceedings as early as this week. So the hardliners typically they want to hold the party, the Republican Party, to hostage and make sure that they get whatever they want through the speaker. And right now they're saying that McCarthy is not the conservative leader that they want. He's akin to the Tea Party movement in the Republican Party in the past, which now evolved and became those that really supported Donald Trump. So how that will work out is going to be seen. Of course, there's always a risk when you have a movement within your party that's threatening to oppose you. But McCarthy has come out strongly and has actually dared him to go ahead and try and see if he succeeds. So that's going to be something we'll be watching closely.
But you have touched on what's the most concerning for a lot of people is the fact that Ukraine seems to have taken a hit in the process of this deal. Democrats agreed not to approve any more funding to that country, and that's within the terms of the stopgap deal. What does that mean for Ukraine?
It's a tough one because, to be fair, a lot of money has been spent on Ukraine and supporting Ukraine for the current war they're having with Russia. And at some point, people are going to ask questions because this is really taxpayers' money that have been spent, by the U.S. government. So the Republican Party always wants to portray themselves as being conservatives. They want to be fiscally responsible. So the Democrats are not always going to get their way, especially with the Republicans being in control of the House. So it is going to affect the Ukrainian government because obviously they still need a lot of funds to be able to not only rebuild their country but defend themselves against the Russian onslaught. So that is something that the president will have to find a way to probably bring more Republicans to the table to continue to.
Now, and I was just going to ask you about that because Speaker McCarthy has said that he will introduce another bill in the coming days to discuss further funding to Ukraine. But will he get the buy-in of both parties, especially his party?
His party is where the problem will lie. The Democrats, of course, they want the funding to happen. It's just now having to find those numbers within the Mark Gaetz movement that will, side with him. And obviously that will mean he will have to do some horse trading, maybe offer them some things that they will be happy with for him to get enough numbers to be able to help some additional funding go to Ukraine. But it's going to be interesting in the next few days to see how all that plays out.
And one thing we know is that this bill only ensures funding, and that's till November the 17th, which means that the drama we saw over the weekend is likely to be repeated again in 7 weeks or less than 7 weeks. So what next?
You know, it will happen, and they will just find a way to agree again. Here's what you need to understand. Families that depend on paychecks from the U.S. government, everybody's watching. And no, I mean, we're approaching the holiday season. So it's going to be very, very difficult for that funding not to come through. They will find a way. Believe me, they will find a way to get additional funding for the government to keep all the services, essential services going, air traffic control, and a whole lot of other things that the government pays for. You know, so they will find a way. And I don't see a situation where the U.S. government will really, really shut down, especially at this time of the year. They will find a way.
And government shutdown only happens in the U.S. It never really happens in any other country in the world. And people are wondering, is there no way to avoid this or stop this altogether?
Like I said, really, when you really look at what happens, it's really not a shutdown per se, because the U.S. government can never afford to fully shut down. So
it has done that. Sorry to interrupt you. I think for at least 10 times that has happened. Other times it's just the filibustering that happens around it. But right now, it was close to it. And people are wondering why even the threat at all. Are there no ways to ensure that, look, it doesn't even get here, that the idea of a government shutdown doesn't even happen in the first place?
You're right. But the thing is, this is how U.S. politics work. Everything is about leverage, and it's all about horse trading. Even on those occasions that you mentioned, some of the governments in power, there was only democracy. It happened sometimes under the Republicans, and the president just has to continue to find ways to, avoid this situation coming up. But it's a very tough thing to do, because when you're spending money, taxpayer money, you have to negotiate before you can spend that. Is there a way to stop it? I'm not sure there is. But again, that's all down to who is in the White House and how they want to run their government. And this one right now is all on Joe Biden.
We'll see how things play out. November 17th is barely 7 weeks away. We're monitoring the situation. Thank you so much for talking to us, as always. Global Affairs Analyst, Ibidolakwa Ajayi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.